topic of this video is adding and subtracting fractions. When you have two fractions that have a common denominator, that means the same number on the bottom, life is good, it's not hard at all. All you want to do is add the numerators, the numbers on top, and keep the denominators the same. So when we have -7/4 plus 2/4, the first thing you want to do is think of this negative sign as being part of the numerator always. So our numerator here is -7 plus 2. So -7 plus 2 is going to give us -5. And I'm going to actually put the negative out in front rather than being on the numerator or the denominator, and that's a good practice. Keep it out in front, the whole fraction's negative. And then I keep my denominator the same, 4. In the second one, we've got 8/11 minus 17/11. So I've got 8 minus 17 on the top, so that means I need to add the numerators. So I'm going to rewrite this as addition. 8 plus -17. So then when I add 8 and -17, they've got opposite signs, so I subtract and get 9. The bigger number is negative, so my fraction is going to be negative. And then I keep my denominator, 11. And it is okay, like in the example of -5/4, to keep your answer as an improper fraction. You don't need to move to mixed numbers. Things get a little harder when our fractions don't have the same denominator. But that's okay. We will conquer the unlike denominators. Unlike denominators are what we see here. We've got 2/5 plus 3/6, and the denominators are 5 and 6. So the first thing you want to do is figure out what the least common denominator between 5 and 6 would be. This is basically the smallest number that is a multiple of both 5 and 6. We usually abbreviate least common denominator, LCD, and in this case it's 30 because it's the smallest number that's a multiple of both 5 and 6. So then what we're going to do is rewrite the fractions with a denominator of 30. So instead of something in fifths and something in sixths, we're going to write them both as some number of 30ths. So what you have to do is you have to think, okay, to get from 5 to 30, what do I multiply by? Well, I multiply by 6. And so if you multiply the bottom by 6, you also want to multiply the top by 6. So 5 times 6 gave me 30, 2 times 6 gave me 12. 2/5 is the same thing as 12/30. And what we did here was we actually multiplied by 1. 6/6 is like multiplying by 1. You should remember from earlier in our review that multiplying by 1 doesn't change anything. So now we're going to do the same thing to the other fraction. In order to get from 6 to 30, we need to multiply by 5. So since we multiplied by 5 on the bottom, we'll also multiply by 5 on the top. Essentially, we're multiplying by 5/5, or 1. So 3 times 5 is 15. So now what we have is 12/30 plus 15/30. So now we can add the numerators together. 12 plus 15 is 27. And we keep our denominators the same. That's 30. So we have 27/30. And then we just want to make sure to see if we can reduce or not. And in fact, 3 goes into 27 9 times, and 3 goes into 30 10 times. So our answer is 9/10, and we're done. Here's another example. 2/4 minus 3/6. And what we want to do here is, first of all, find the least common denominator. We want to know what's the smallest number that's a multiple of both 4 and 6. And in this case, that number is 12. 4 goes into 12 3 times, 6 goes into 12 2 times. So we're going to rewrite these fractions with a denominator of not 4, I almost wrote that again, but 12. So we're going to have some number of twelfths minus some number of twelfths. So to get from 4 to 12, we multiply by 3. And so that means we're going to multiply the top by 3 as well. So 4 times 3 gives us this 12. 2 times 3 is going to give us 6. What do we multiply 6 by to get 12? Well, that's 2. So we multiply the 6 by 2 to get this 12, and that means we have to multiply the top by 2 as well. So 3 times 2 is 6. And again, this is okay because what we really did here is multiplied each fraction by 1 and didn't change it. So what we end up with is 6/12 minus 6/12. So if we add or subtract the numerators, 6 minus 6 is 0. Keep the denominator the same, you get 12. And 0 over 12 is like 0 divided by 12, and 0 divided by any number is 0. So that's what we have, 0. And that makes sense because if you take one number and subtract itself from it, it would make sense that we get 0. And here's one more, negative 7/30 minus 3/5. So first of all, we'll think about our LCD. And actually, in this one, the smallest number that's a multiple of both 30 and 5 is 30. And sometimes it happens that one of the numbers will be the LCD. And that is perfectly okay. So in this one, we've got a 30 on the bottom of both. And so for the first fraction, since the denominator is already 30, we don't need to change the fraction at all. So this is just going to stay negative 7/30. We've got this minus sign. And then in order to go from 5 to 30, we need to multiply by 6. So what we're doing here is multiplying this fraction by 6 over 6. So when I multiply the numerators, 3 times 6 is 18. Now I need to subtract. And what I have is a negative 7 minus 18. And I'm going to remember that negative 7 minus 18 is like saying negative 7 plus negative 18. So when I have two numbers with the same signs, I add them and keep the sign. So 7 plus 18 is 25. They are both negative, so I'm going to keep it negative on top for my fraction. My denominator stays the same, that's 30. And then finally, I'm going to simplify. I know that 5 goes into 25 5 times, goes into 30 6 times, so my answer is negative 5 over 6. And we're finished. Time to practice.